Occam's razor. This is the fine edge that we use to cut through the BS, to get discernment on heavy topics that are relevant to the truther community and to the world at large today. Every so often someone comes along who has new information, totally new information. This is usually in the form of someone who's a survivor or an experiencer of some sort. This episode that you're about to see is possibly the best episode of You Don't Know to date. I'm interviewing a young man named CATALIN NEWPORT from Ohio. This guy is a targeted individual, although he doesn't like to have that title for obvious reasons. Just go ahead and watch this and see what you think. There's a lot of new information here. Anyone who's followed the TI/Gangstalking community knows that it's just a morass of people raging and going crazy, and you don't know who's real and who's not. Obviously, the TI phenomenon is real. The electronic harassment, the gang stalking, the perps, on and on. Yes, it's absolutely real, but everything has purposely become so obfuscated that it's sometimes hard to get the true story. And there are different types of targeted individuals. Let me stress that there are different types of targeted individuals. Not really for the first time, but I myself do not like to be, have the moniker of a targeted individual. But many of you who've watched this show for years know about the strange family that I come from, and my great uncle who controlled every dime of the United States defense budget for over 40 years. And this, of course, led me to wonder about many things. Was I somehow in one of these programs? And we, meaning me, my psychics and I, several of my psychics, right now there seems to be a consensus that no, I have not been through these trauma-based mind-controlled programs. However, there is a consensus that I was put through some type of program as a child and throughout my life, which is more hypnotic-based. In other words, the idea that I myself am under some form of mind control. Okay. Now that's not too far off in outer space, depending on how you look at things, because in my opinion, everyone, maybe in the world, certainly every American, or anyone who's ever seen a TV, is under at least some basic generalized mind control, if not specific, at least generalized. This latest election that we had it's a psyop. Okay, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I transcended the left-right paradigm decades ago. Okay, I don't buy into any of that. Truthfully, I never did. I'm however old I am. I've never voted, and I've been castigated for that really throughout my entire life, and by people, friends, relatives, and stuff like this. And one person told me that I did not have a voice because I chose to not vote. Well, guess what? I've got a fucking YouTube show with tens of thousands of viewers worldwide. Tell me I don't have a motherfucking voice, huh? I got a voice, all right? Just because I don't vote doesn't mean I don't have a voice. I have a voice. I am AYIN THROPOS, the most extreme conspiracy theorist in North America, and I have a voice. You are watching You Don't Know, a Basis, Texas production. Hold on to your pants, because this episode, part 2 of my interview with CATALIN NEWPORT, it's heavy, man. It's heavy. There's absolutely new information here for people that are interested in this phenomenon, which is related to chemtrails, which is related to eugenics, which is related to transhumanism, which is related to mind control. It's related to all of these things. And CATALIN is able to express or relate to me some experiences that he's had and still ongoing, and some aspects of it that I had never heard of before, which is quite unusual, because I'm not going to bullshit you folks. There's no such thing as a conspiracy that I've never heard of. You know what I mean? I know a lot about the truther movement, in our community, or I wouldn't be, where I'm at right now, and that is speaking to you, the people that are earnestly want to know what the F is going on with all this stuff. And so anyway, without further ado, I'm going to roll part 2 of the interview with AYIN THROPOS and CATALIN NEWPORT. TIs and Gangstalking Secrets, part 2. Here we go.
I see the pain inside. It's time to your body go. I know you never know tonight. Exactly what you're looking for. I see the pain inside. It's time to your body go. I know you never know tonight. Exactly what you're looking for. I see the pain inside. It's time to your body go. I know you never know tonight. Exactly what you're looking for. I see the pain inside. It's time to your body go. I know you never know tonight. Exactly what you're looking for. I see the pain inside. It's time to your body go. I know you never know tonight. Exactly what you're looking for. I see the pain inside. It's time to your body go.
It's the third UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, that's been owned by Basis Texas Productions, which produces this show you're watching right here. You don't know. You don't know, huh? So don't act like you do. You don't know. You don't know, huh? So don't act like you do. You don't know. 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 So don't act like you do. So don't act like you do. Because then something bad, like the cruelest woman in the world, might happen to you. Oh, you can't handle it, huh? You can't handle the truth. How do I know that? Because I can't handle the truth. You damn sure can't handle the cruelest woman in the world. And don't even think about trying to handle the most beautiful woman in the world, because it ain't happening.
My name is AYIN THROPOS. When the people of the world call out to a man such as myself to restore peace, secure our borders, and dispense justice, you'll know that things have gone horribly wrong. In the coming days, we will face a challenge like you have never known before. You will be asked to work for free. You will be asked to snitch on your neighbors. You will be asked to pimp out your sons and daughters. I've got one question for you. Will you fight? Will you fight to take back our way of life? Or will you die like chaff in the wind? If you want to live, come with me. Otherwise, die like a maggot.
Every human being that draws their next breath has two of these. You cannot be alive and not have these in you. And they come in, there's two of them. They come into you right before you're born, and they leave right before you die. And they are the source of many of our thoughts. And so we must learn to recognize which thoughts are ours and which thoughts are not ours, but we think they're ours. Well, now, how much does this resonate, and how identical almost does this sound to what you're saying? And so what I'm thinking is that a lot of this technology is learned to where man has learned to somehow take control of something that already was there. You know, because this has to do with alternate personalities, people going crazy, and then just regular people. You know, Don Juan says, you know, the human mind is morose, contradictory, and everything like that. You know, everything bad that happens, people do things that don't make sense. They do things they don't want to do. You know, and we just think it's humanism or whatever. It's this battle within us. You know, between these, and they're not even voices. It's you think it's, you know, your thoughts, but until you're exposed to this idea or ideas like you were just expressing, you'd have to think that they were your thoughts. You know, you would just think, oh, I really am a piece of shit. I really am a loser. I'm not going anywhere. You know, are these, even if these voices aren't saying this, these are ideas they're trying to express. And so I'm postulating, what if, you know, we know this thing, that humanity has this, and then now it sounds like the exact same thing that you're describing. They must be related. There must be some relation.
I think that's, I think there's probably, I don't know too much about a lot of those things you referenced. That's my first hearing of them. But again, it sounds like, I guess, how people, regardless of exactly how they think about it, they try to correlate things like that to themselves. And what's them versus the outside, or what's forced on them and what comes from within, you know, kind of desire that comes from within you, these constructs that people have created and everything, either within society or, you know, anything else, and kind of finding your way through those things and what guides you. And, you know, and people could look at it a lot of different ways. You know, some people maybe go within themselves. Some people branch out and want to help other people. I mean, so there's a lot of things there. But, and when I think about stuff like that, I think about it. I try to think about it in a lot of ways, and where the wisdom can come from it, what you can gain from it, and to view it with positivity, sort of, in a way, you know. But again, people that are exposed to this kind of thing, they'll reference MK Ultra a lot. You know, this is mind control, and there's no frills here. This is a scary level of mind control. This is anything that people seen and they thought was sci-fi about it. It's realized, and it's the brain sciences. It's, you know, and truthfully, it's the highest level of all the sciences coming together, from mathematics to basically chemistry, biology, modeling,
drugs, pharmacopoeia,
working through things, trying to basically, how could you use them to mold populations? maybe change the human condition, maybe change it to your own agenda. And that's why, you know, with governments using these things, with people that have developed them, with artificial intelligence, there's a lot of interesting things. I'm not very well versed in it, but, you know, something for people to look at probably would be like strong AI and what's going to happen if people would reach maybe within one of these systems general level super intelligence, something that's so far beyond any person and things like that. And when you have a machine that can do mathematics, can do physics, has all these modelings, can hack human brains in essence, basically, for lack of a better term. I mean, we've already reached that threshold, in my opinion. And so, again, I'm somebody that thinks that definitely America's big in computing, China too, and those are the computers we know about that are released. Japan has the fastest one on the list right now, supercomputer. It's Fugaku in Japan. If people look at the amount of calculations that is credited with for 1 second, it's startling. And so, again, these are the ones that are disclosed. Who knows what the military has actually been able to construct with, again, like you stated, billion-dollar budgets every year, with a goal in mind, and all these types of things. And it's scary because I've been ran through situations to where, again, it can make you believe things. That's why I never know and I always try to be reasonable with people when I talk with them on like internet forums and stuff like that, because I don't know what they've been through and I don't know what's being laid on them at this time. I've had times where basically parts of my brain are locked off. I can't use them. I'm being so injected with information and held with interference in what the technology is doing to me at the time, that if it wants to make you believe something, again, it can. Like, I have my perception now, but if it laid on me in a certain way, it could do it to me right now. It doesn't matter that I know it can do it. You know what I mean? And that again, that's something that people have always maybe wanted to think like, oh, the human condition, you know, goodness can pull through and all these things. Well, we're talking about altering brain chemistry and cognition on an absolute level that there's no person that can. Everybody's susceptible to it. And that's why it's so dangerous. This technology has the potential, if it's misused by someone, if you could create a system that could overcome another country's system and they wanted to use it for very disastrous means, you could enslave all of humanity. You could do it to such an extent if they could prevail on someone like they prevail on me and do it over a large populace, you could do it and they would never know. So these are scary things for someone that gets ran through this stuff. And then you have this thing telling you, I'm a demon, I'm this, I'm that, trying to make you believe it. One of the things that ran me through in front of my brother, who had to watch this, and I was kind of telling him some of the stuff that was happening to me at the time. I'm not sure how much he believed me at the time. I think he believes me a lot more now, since I was able to find some things, find information, explain it better, correlate it better to him, and all these types of things. But it told me I was an artificial person and told me I was a clone and all these things. And at the time, it's hitting me in such a way to make me believe it. Now, if it would just tell me these things, I'd just keep going on doing whatever I'm doing. It's just berating me with voice to skull, basically. But when it's acting on you with, like in telepathic means, like artificial telepathy, synthetic telepathy, these types of things, there's nothing you can do. I mean, and it probably did that to me for about 30 minutes, and it's like this, and I'm on the couch, my brother's just sitting there watching TV, probably like, what the fuck, and it eventually relinquished that off of me. I mean, another thing it did, and this sounds obscene too, and this is why people that think they're getting gang stalked, I think maybe as well, it can make you paranoid. Not just make you paranoid, but like I said, it can hold cognition in your brain or make you believe something in such a way that you can't fight it. There's nothing you can do. And so I come in one day and I'm sitting at the table, and it's like it scares me, makes me very, very much like it didn't do it all the way, or it would have been a lot worse. But it's like the neighbor's going to shoot me. Now what kind of sense does that make? But it's acting on you in such a way at that point, and it did it for a few minutes, and I sat there, and by my brother and one of our friends, and eventually it just made me get up and walk in the kitchen. That's something else I've experienced, is forced movements, forced speech as well, precise speech, to the point that it could be running my speech right now 100% some of the time. It can interrupt me, make me stutter. That's something easy enough for someone to be like, okay, I could see you getting hit with a signal and it messing up your nerves. But this is the level, that's extreme sophistication.
Okay, you're saying it can make you pick up a gun and shoot somebody?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, now, has it ever made you do anything like that? Like punch somebody or do anything violent?
Okay, well, fortunately, I haven't done anything really overly violent. I got in like a little scrap at a bar one night. I smacked a dude. He got up, smacked him again. No big deal. So nothing overly there.
But it made you do that?
Well, I was standing up for my friend. That's one of the things. I don't know. That could be me too, right? I didn't act completely out of character.
Right.
So that's something that could expose it too. When you're speaking, I'm not someone that, I don't attack someone verbally, you know what I mean? Too much. It takes a lot to get me going. So if I get overly anxious like that, it's doing it. I mean, I've had it do it to where it's raising my voice around my family and stuff. And again, you could easily, it looks like someone's having a psychotic break or something. And then they're telling you they're hearing voices and all these types of things. And a good one would be, I'm sleeping and I've never punched anything like out of anger. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm sleeping. I get up, and as soon as I hop up and punch my wall and mess up the plaster some. And I look at it and I was like, oh man. And I was like, you could have broke my knuckle if I was a couple inches over. I about hit the stud. This could all be just like a little scenario that it just constructed. So it pops me up out of bed, makes me punch a wall, makes me talk out loud to it. And then, and I've had these things. I drove around for months, basically. I mean, I'm staying with my brother. And so instead of like having forced dialogue around him the whole time, because it's making me talk, I go and drive around, and it's running the conversation. It's talking to me, but it's using my voice. It can still interject into my brain too, as much as it likes, but it'll run my voice, but it'll use it for itself. So it'll run a conversation. And now here's the thing. It can make you appear like you're answering it. It's your volition that is doing this, and you're having a conversation with it. It can run both sides of that conversation, and none of that is you. You know what I mean? But it's creating this in the brain. It's causing those actions. I mean, so again, when people talk about, hey, someone could be manipulated politically, a figure could be made to say, absolutely. I mean, that's just one look at something like that, since people, you're looking at people high up in defense departments in whatever country's having these things. I'll at least go with that one. As far as where all it could be, I won't like conjecture clearly. But I mean, I've done with it extensively to where I'm having full two-sided dialogue, and it's made a point to it'll abuse me while it's doing that. These are I guess you'd call them tactics, but it throws every option at you. So there's almost no way you could know until it could be know. To where people are getting abused, and they're like, well, because they think people are voicing through this a lot of times. This is something it did to me as well, is when it first came online, it tried to play like it was people in shifts, and they're on you 24/7. But they voice too much. Nobody's going to sit there in a microphone, even if they're passing it off, or they each got their own. Never stutter, never, and it depends how repetitive it is on somebody. Mine ended up being very interactive, but I went through extreme times of extreme repetitiveness too. And mine ended up being very interactive, but I went through extreme times of extreme repetitiveness too. And then very slow to drop things out, bring things up from your past and use them to abuse you. So it's there's just so many things. Why it was kind of exposing how much it can run my speech, and again, it's why I say I can't know, because I know I can't. Is because it's like, you didn't say that, I made you say that. And and it'll tell you that right after you just had a conversation or something with it. And it'll force thoughts into your head, and then it'll start attacking you for those thoughts. And it's like, well, this is what you think. And again, with me, since I'm left to believe that, I basically think it's of military origin, basically somewhere. I can't say exactly where, but it'll run through scenarios like, well, I could be Russian, CATALIN. I could be this. You like the Russians. You're a Russian sympathizer. You're this or that. Look at the Chinese. I start watching Chinese news. It's a whole different world I've been exposed to for the last 2 years. And being abused like this and being stricken of human rights and realizing that, you start seeing that this is happening everywhere. And it starts delving into all these things and maybe what you really think and all these type of things and being able to define those things. Now, this can happen to different extents for people, but it knows. I mean, it's pulled up memories from my childhood, my earliest memories and stuff. And it'll show me like mental pictures. It remembers times when I was a kid and I was playing with toys that, unless I was monitored then by something like this, but again, computers probably weren't this advanced back then. Even the ones that were, they just weren't. And so it's pulling that out of information in your brain that's stored. I mean, they figured out how to decode the brain, basically, to run movements so precise. That's multiple spots in the brain. Language too. Language is something that, it kind of eludes, I think, a lot of people that even study it and work on it and things like that. But it can precisely force it. So, these are all things that it's really something to go through. And a lot of people, they think they can maybe trick the artificial intelligence and stuff. I can't say that everybody's on the same platform or anything like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just know what I've been exposed to. And it's tried to play really stupid with me. And I'll say something and then it'll try to attack me like, you think I'm a super intelligence and stuff, like you think I'm all this already. And it's because of what it's exposed to me and the things it can already do. And then I'll read something and it'll take things, it'll use like a 3-day period of stuff and it'll just run through everything it can. It'll grasp to something, a commercial you see, it's endless, man. This stuff it can do, any possible thing you could think, that's like what it'll start attacking people for. So it's not even necessarily what it's attacking you for, it's just attacking you all the time. And so, in the repetitiveness, a lot of people will say, that's a torture in itself. Being completely helpless in your own body, in your own brain, no way to get away from it. I haven't even tried shielding or anything like that. I never did.
You haven't tried what?
You
haven't tried what?
Shielding. A lot of people will.
Oh, like a Faraday cage or something like that?
Faraday cage or layering up with,
a tinfoil hat. A tinfoil hat. That's what the idea comes from, of a tinfoil hat. Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things. It's just, they can look deep into the earth with low frequency, deep earth tomography, stuff like that. And I have to think these things were specifically designed and utilized to find underground structures, find military bunkers, do things like that. But again, it's crazy. And it's crazy to see the world the way it is and know something like this exists. And then even hear stories. I've read some, there's a book called Operation Mind Control. And it's an old one that the CIA bought up a bunch of copies when it first came out to try to keep it off the shelves. And this guy, he wrote another part to it, and there's the complete edition he put out before he passed away. His name's right here, Walter H. Bauer. And it's just, he looks at a lot of different things. But there's a chapter in there on EM something, or he talks about wavies. And this was a term that another author used about people that were going through similar things to this, and this was back in the 80s. They were hearing voices in their head and some of that, and he uses the girl's words in it, and these voices are telling her stuff, and she's riding a horse, and they tell her they're going to make her horse stumble, and then her horse stumbles. And she says, well, the only thing I could think is that they hit its nervous system. That's back in the 80s, you know? And as somebody's getting hit with this kind of stuff, and now we're like 30 years later. And so people's testimonies, that's some of the only truth people might find out of some of these things, because I don't know how much it's going to be exposed. People that look into neuroscience and things like that, they could find all types of research where they'll see that on some level all this can be done. In a laboratory, they've done this and that. Joseph C. Sharp, he accomplished voice transmission in microwave auditory effect in 1973.
You're talking about voice of God?
Well, that's probably its origin, basically. And but he did that in 1973, and there's the only paper for the explanation of it is called Microwaves and Behavior with Don R. Justison, come out in 1975, and it was published in the Journal of Psychology. And it's a scientific journal, and it's out there, and that's still one of the best pieces of knowing that this can happen, other than patents that are from the military for radio frequency hearing effect and microwave effect. There's a couple that's assigned to the Secretary of the Air Force, and so I mean, and that's one aspect of it, but that's putting voices in someone's head. And now the Army's studying like synthetic telepathy and stuff, and they're telling you they're going to give their guys sensors in their helmets, and however they're going to figure out how to do it. And so the Army and DARPA and stuff studying things like that, but they already know how to do it remotely.
Oh yeah, it's already here. It's already a reality. I don't know if you've heard about Dr. Patrick Flanagan, but let me tell you, I'm going to cut it right here. You and me are just talking now. This is edited out. This testimony what we've got here is probably, I'm not exaggerating, probably some of the best TI testimony ever. It's fucking good. What I'd like to do, and you tell me, I would like to take a 10-minute break. I'm going to turn the cameras off, but I would like to leave our Skype conversation on, take a 10-minute break, and then come back and hit it, because we've already, we're going to have enough for 2 or 3 episodes here. And I think it's going to go viral. I don't know. It's hard to say, but the testimony, we're getting some really good content. What do you think about that? Do you have and I'm not saying another hour, because we've gone an hour, but if we take a 10-minute break and come back and maybe do another 30 minutes, are you up for that?
That's fine.
Okay. One thing I want you to think about while we're taking our break is, if you think that there's some event, if you piss somebody off, or what, got this started with you 2 years ago, and just any other thing that you want to talk about. And I might bring up Dr. Patrick Flanagan, and I'm going to show you the Neurophone, which is a device that he made. We're getting some good shit here.
I've heard him talk a little bit. He's obviously someone who's very talented, very gifted. I mean, he figured out the Neurophone, I think, when he was about 15. And that's something that the military, they basically confiscated that from him from his patent.
I have one. I'm going to show it to you. I have one. They cost $700. Yeah, I'm going to show it to you. I've showed it to my audience before. Yeah. And you know, he won a contest with it when he was 13 years old. He had been using it on himself since he was 7 years old. And he got it from aliens. He think in his mind he got it from aliens, the technology. But he didn't even know how it worked. But some guy came later and figured out how it worked, and we have something in common with cetaceans, which are your porpoises, your dolphins, and your whales. And it's an organs called saccules. And they're little sacs down here under your ear and your head. And they think that they're worthless, but then again, they help you keep your balance, so I don't know how that's worthless. But cetaceans use it to communicate with each other, to talk to each other through the water. Well, what the neurophone does is you put in audio information like lessons or something like that, and you put on the electrodes, and it directs the information. It's like hearing through your skin. But it's not going to your conscious. It's going directly injecting it to your subconscious. That's why you can play tennis, you can go on a date, you can do anything and be learning Hungarian at the same time.
That's crazy.
And it's an intelligence enhancing device. And I haven't started using it in earnest, but I'm already like, let's just say smart. Okay, but I'm going to use this thing to be like, you know, I'm gonna experiment on myself. Other people have been using this for years. You know, the people that are good that work for his organization. He died this year, at the very beginning of this year.
Didn't know that.
But yeah, let's talk about him and then and get some more of your experiences. Take about 10 or 12 minute break. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, bro.
All right, man.
How does that sound, Catalin?
Sounds good.
Kick ass. Yeah, we're back with Catalin Newport, and this turned out to be a very insightful testimony. Catalin, I was going to ask you, you mentioned, you referred several times to the fact that you've been under this attack pretty much consistently for about 2 years.
Yep, just a little bit over 2 years now.
What in your mind got you designated or got you targeted?
For me, I couldn't point to anything, honestly. And I guess I don't think why so much. I don't pursue that question. And some of it's probably, it's the same thing, like to deprive someone of human rights, of, you know, and however you want to look at, you know, someone's rights and things like that. There's no excuse that's tolerable anyway. So to torture somebody and things like that, I mean, this is something that, due to my situation, I've had to put a little more thought in than I ever had before. You know, as far as really looking at some of the innate problems in society, in people, from any aspect that you want to look at it from. And very much the technology, it prompts me on those things. And I mean, we're discussing like geopolitical issues, human rights issues, looking at it from the perspective of anywhere from government to the average person to, you know, any way you want to look at it. Deep psychological things, sociology, I mean, all those types of deals, science. You know, it throws religion in a little bit with me, though it's not trying to make me pursue religion, anything like that. I just was never very religious. I just always kind of looked at it as, I think of it more in a historical aspect, you know what I mean? When was this? When was this, you know? So I just I look at history's chronology the best I can, things like that. But as to why, I couldn't say with any certainty. I don't feel like I was targeted out for those types of reasons, I guess, you know.
Okay, so this attack has done many things to you, and I do not, absolutely don't want anyone to think I'm. There is no glamorizing any of this. That's what people don't. You know, if you're some person who just graduated from high school and you didn't have enough friends or something like that, you wouldn't want to wish this on your worst enemy. There's nothing glamorous about this. Let me say that. But true or not true, one thing that it's done to you is made you stronger.
Well, it's I would look at it as this is reality. This is here. You know what I mean? I'm not somebody that would want to shield myself from the truth and knowing what's really out there and everything that implies, you know? So in that, as to give me a better perspective, to raise my level of awareness within the sphere of a lot of things, within science, within what's possible, anything like that. Kind of rethinking how the human body operates, what's going on in the world. I mean, so in those ways, I think, yeah, it's given me a better recollection of how things really, you know, what's here and what's happening. So as far as physically stronger, again, it's one of those things that I could have been seriously hurt, seriously injured if the technology was implemented on me like that. I mean, it's probably very, very small things to where, I mean, you could do extreme damage to somebody. The diplomats who were hit, and it just recently hit the media again, that it was probably microwave attacks. I've been under that impression for a while, since I've been going through this, while they were still figuring those things out. But those people, they show physical damage. They like something in their gray matter and white matter or something in their brain. None of that's happened to me. I don't feel like I'm hurt except in the moments. Now, in my life, I actually have some legal troubles and things now. I've been forced into a psychiatric hospital twice, since I didn't state that to you earlier. And I had one in between time where, again, the technology was sort of revealing maybe some things to me, if you want to look back on it like that. But the first time is when this all happened. I was at a friend's house, and at this time, the sound seemed like it came from the TV. And it was like, this is happening. And then I very quickly had like a mock panic attack. And basically, I would explain it as like a feeling of vertigo, tunnel vision, and very, very instantly anxious. And again, I went through heart palpitations for 10 years. I never had an anxiety problem. And so it doesn't do yourself good to get worked up. You know, if your heart's reacting, you're trying to just stay even keeled. If you panic, it's just going to make stuff worse. You don't need an adrenaline rush. So I'm not very susceptible to that ordinarily. But when it's forced on you, there's nothing you can do. That was the first time, and then that was the first time I really know I got hit, and got hit hard. It was at my friend's house. And I noticed none of them noticed that. And a couple days later, and I checked myself, I went to another emergency room, as I went to the emergency room right after that happened. They gave me like anti-anxiety and sent me home. And I was probably made to feel paranoid at the time. And I was, and when I was in the hospital, I was driving around a little bit much. Like, I was distressed, but I wasn't distressed that much. And so I kind of noticed that at the time. I was allowed to notice it, is how I would reference it, because of what could have been done to me and how my perception could have been controlled. Rather, it was inlaid to me, or I was actually able to perceive it. Again, it's one of those things, man, with mind control, is that both are a possibility. So it's like an open-ended kind of thing, to really grasp it and go through it like that. And so a couple days later, I was at my parents' house. My mom was watching TV, and again, and now this would probably scare the shit out of somebody anyway. But again, if you lay on them to scare the shit out of them, especially enforcing it. Same thing, like some extra auditory perception seemingly coming from the TV, like it was pumped through the speakers basically, but she didn't hear it. And I was standing right there and noticed she didn't. And it said, "We're not after your friends, we're after you." So this is the same thing. It's the voice to skull or the telepathy. But now, most of the time, it's all intracranial voice. But when it started, and well into when it started, it might do it sometimes now here and there. But it can make the voice appear to come from anywhere. And it can mimic it so well, like voices outside the window. One night when I was going to sleep, it made it sound like there was some alien-like noises coming from outside the window, some weird clicks, things like that, something, you know. And so I checked myself into the psychiatric ward here, and I was held for like 5 days. They didn't want to hear much. They let me go, gave me some medication, and I was taking it. And a couple days later, I woke up, made to think like maybe I had an allergic reaction or something. I woke up freezing cold, and I felt ill. I almost thought I was going to go to the ER because I felt so odd. I mean, I didn't know if it was like a bad reaction to the medicine, and I've never been allergic to anything. But that passed, and I went back to bed. And a few months later, while I'm going through all this, and it's telling me, like, do you want to go back to the hospital? Do you want to do this? I'm like, no, it's not going to do any good. This ain't, that's not going to help me. And it's like, nope, we're going. And it makes me get up, get in my car, and plead with it the whole time we're going there that, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go in here. This isn't going to help. Don't make me do this. I start the check-in, and the nurse realized that I had just been in there not too long ago. And so she said, well, you got to have a plan or something. You were just in here. Are you sure you want to do this? At that point, the technology let me get up and walk out. But, I mean, I'm serious. That's how dangerous and detrimental this could be, is that people can be literally forced. And that's why, I mean, I've seen, I guess, a lot of people that are probably going through it, and I don't know that they realize some of those things can be done, that movement can be controlled so well. Some of the people that have come out and talked about it, I don't know that they mentioned that part. You got to dig into people's testimonies.
I haven't really heard that either. And yeah. What I hear in a lot of these gang-stalking Facebook groups and stuff like that, and this is where you and I ran across one another, there's so much just base, hatred, and, and it's understandable because they're under pain and everything, and yeah, I definitely think there's some people that are fake, for sure, and there's some people that are probably imagining it, and I think that the human mind is so. I think that if someone were to become fascinated with gang stalking, that they really could end up being in reality gang stalked, just because one of the most top secret things is the human's ability to manifest things. Sure, yeah. And I think that this gang stalking is absolutely real. But if somebody got into those communities that was faking it or something, they could very well end up being targeted for real. It's nothing to fool with. That's for sure.
No, I would think that there's better places to troll, because people that, there is a possibility that people could have handlers in some cases, or that would check in somehow or whatever. In my case, I'm led to believe that, it's the computer. It's the intelligence-infused supercomputer, artificial intelligence, whatever you want to call it exactly. I hearken to call it that when it's acting on human intelligence, So, because it's manifesting into our reality. It's not stuck in the cyber realm anymore. It's not being used as a tool in that manner. So, and again, that's where people, when they start digging into things, what governments have been known to do, they all work in counterintelligence. They all have own departments for that. People know about what Snowden released and the massive surveillance that's going on, and if America's doing it, other countries are doing it, you know. Bet. And so that's very easy for people to get locked into one thing, to think that, hey, I'm being tracked, I'm being poisoned, And because it can make me smell things. Again, that's in the brain. So I can be made to smell like gas. And sometimes it'll do it to me because it doesn't really get a rise out of me like that. I would have to force it. But like I was driving around the other day, and it makes me smell a weird smell like gas. It made me smell gas, but I don't think it was too strong. It's nothing wrong with my car and stuff like that. But they can trick people like that. And you can have tastes. One of the ones it's done to me is like metallic tastes, things like that. It's made me smell nasty odors like dog crap and stuff like that. But it's all just little things, and it depends what that person goes through. But again, there's a couple reports I've heard where people have been abused by a smaller group, and they might have been poisoned and all this kind of stuff. So I'm careful if I correspond with people like that online, because I don't want to pretend like I always know. You know what I mean? Because it's a possibility.
It really is. And let me just go ahead and tell you, and the audience, my audience already knows this about me, and because of my third book, my family created the national security state. And my father's uncle, my great uncle, late congressional leader George Mahon, controlled every dime of the United States defense budget for over 40 years. That's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, every dime. He was the chairman of the Appropriations Committee and the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and he also created some agencies that you've probably never heard of, like the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, and NASA. Yes, that NASA. And no one's ever tried to refute these assertions that I've been making for years, mainly because none of it's a secret. A fifth grader can look this shit up in 3 minutes on the internet. It's all, and so I am a targeted individual. I always have been. There's different types of targeting too, you know what I mean, where they're trying to bring people into roles of this and that. And so I have always been interested in mind control, just through wondering do I have some type of relation to this and everything, and then through all my own personal experiences and a Kundalini awakening, or partial a Kundalini awakening I had several years ago in my ayahuasca stuff. And then basically I got a handler about 3 years ago, she's still my handler. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world. She's a 27-year Hollywood motion picture industry veteran. I mean, you can't make this shit up. And she kind of doesn't really believe in the Illuminati too much, you know what I mean? That's what I've learned, is somebody, I don't know what the percentage is, but I think it's a pretty high percent. Maybe, I'm just throwing a number out there, like maybe 40% of that, or something like that, of people in the Illuminati do not believe in the existence of the Illuminati. That's mind control. And I mean, it's wild, man. It's fucking wild. And it's just hard to know. But when you do have a knowing, and just like things I know about myself, I'm not going to go into it all. A lot of the, my viewers already know about this. But like these things that are happening to you, well, yeah, you don't have any physical scars or anything like this, but you know that it's happening. It's for sure. There's no doubt in your mind that that's happening. And by listening to your testimony, there is no doubt in my mind that these things you're saying are absolutely happening to you. And we know, and it's also, now here's another thing. Some of these people in some of these groups like we're in, they might start researching conspiracies or something like that, and then start resonating with some of the stuff. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, your story is the exact opposite. You just came under complete attack, didn't know anything about any of this stuff, and because you were under such heavy attack, you started looking into this to try to find out what's going on, and that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually, I was looking into like legalese a little bit, maybe reading like some of the founding fathers, like the Federalist, Anti-Federalist papers, some things like that. I read like a book on the Civil War, Revolutionary War, and but not like this kind of stuff. I seen and this is just the technology's hit on it a couple of times. I'd watched some YouTube videos and things like that. I seen, people that wanted to be sovereign, basically, they want their rights. And so there's like a deep like, depending on how you look at it and how things have progressed and looking at all these constructs that we've created for ourselves, the rule of law, all these types of things, politics, wasn't very much political. Freemasonry, that's something I looked at, but when I looked it up, I'm like, man, I got to look up the history of it. I got to look up the Scottish Rite. I got to look up this. I got to look up that. I don't look at it as like just a modern conspiracy. I'd have to have a better look. I'd have to have all this. Even Illuminati. I mean, I knew it enough to know that they're like the illuminated ones. And there's like there's an old, maybe an old Bavarian sect or something like that. That's, all this type of, I've heard some of those things. But I seen a video that was about maybe the floating islands over there in Asia.
I know what you're talking about.
Right? And then on that too, it said something about if there would be like a second coming of Christ or like a deity in the sky. And basically I just had the thought that like, well, if that ever happens, it's technology.
Bluebeam, so Operation Bluebeam.
And it was probably a video about that. And but that's about as close as I ever got to this type of technology. I never realized that, like, I'm somebody that thought, I'm like, man, the human brain and outer space are like two of the last great frontiers. Explorers have explored a lot, and maybe like the deep oceans, Challenger Deep and some of those things, looking up some of that stuff. And as well, maybe the inner parts of some of the rainforest. I mean, there's lots of things to discover. But, I mean, that's a couple things I thought. And you know what? This hasn't, even knowing how precisely a brain can be controlled, it's still, there's a control factor. So it takes away some of that free, unencumbered experience. So
brain-free thinking.
It's just because you can force things into a brain and control it and things like that, it's still not the same as understanding a brain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not. It is from a scientific standpoint, knowing the functions and things like that, but it's not understanding people and that they're not just their brain, they're their whole body, their whole experience, all these types of things. So it hasn't broke me in that perspective or anything like that. So, I mean, I don't know. I'll just kind of rant.
Yeah, well, there's some interesting concepts you brought up there. And, Steiner, who I mentioned earlier, he talks about brain-free thinking. And then also we know from different, Hinduism and different stuff like this, you can think with your stomach. There's other parts of your body that think. I did want to... we had talked earlier on the break about the neurophone. That's a neurophone right there. Invented by Dr. Patrick Flanagan. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Looks like a little Walkman, kind of.
Yeah.
It's just a piece of plastic or whatever, but and then you can open it, and it's got settings and stuff like that on it. I haven't used it that much. I'm gonna start using it. But yeah, that's some very interesting points that you bring up there, and you're absolutely right. We can't really criticize the other people, even as hokey as they sound, in these gangstalking groups, because they're having their own experience, and we really, the frontiers of the mind and of the human experience, we really don't know what the limits are, or if there are any, especially if it's true that one of the most top secret things there is the human being's ability to manifest, and that we're kept in ignorance and everything like that, so that we can create their reality, whoever they are, the elite or whatever, that, I don't know if you've heard that idea. We're being brainwashed so that we can create their reality, manifest it, and I can definitely see some truth to that.
Some of it's even maybe as simple as like having a role, feeling like there's something that you should do or something like that. I guess one of the philosophers I really like is Alan Watts, to give you a little perspective. I imagine you probably heard him. So he's someone I'll listen to. Even the that's something else that technology really grasps to. It might grasp to something else for somebody else, but that's probably played a role. There's times when it's laid on me and it's tried to go back and make me be like, well, you like that because it was literally modulating a very nice feeling with a very bad feeling, and it's doing it so fast. And then one time I was laying in my bed, and this is to where I'm basically having it's almost like a dream, but you're fully conscious. It just instantly threw me into a
lucid dream.
It can do it instantly.
Was it a lucid dream?
It would be like, what'd you say?
A lucid, like LUCID, lucid dream.
Yeah, and here's kind of what I took it did a little bit. It mixed a little bit of some H.R. Geiger type artwork and figures and stuff, and it was pretty provocative in that sense too. And it did that, and that was, and that's where it tries to trick me. That's honestly, it's one of the nicer things it's done. But at the time, I didn't get to enjoy it because it's doing like this on off of like very nice feeling, very bad feeling, and it's coupling and mixing it. And again, it's from it misconstruing kind of some aspects of some of the things Alan Watts talks about, where he'll say, well, you can look at this angle but look at the opposite perspective and then bring it all together. So instead of bringing it all together, it just decided to float at both ends. It's the same thing you can do to somebody good and bad. Start playing God and devil games with them.
Absolutely. I mean, so many things you're saying just are hitting me so hard. I don't know if you've heard of Fritz Springmeier, but he wrote the book, How to Create a Total Undetectable Illuminati Slave or whatever. But that's exactly when they're torturing these kids and programming them and stuff like that, exchanging pain for pleasure and making them, think pain is pleasure, warping their minds, and almost this is where you get the idea of, sadomasochism, that the people are getting pleasure from being tortured or whatever. It's associations within the mind.
And that he's not someone I'm familiar with. I'll have to check it out, but it's the same thing. I think that a lot of people that have studied different mind control techniques, they were real interested because the Chinese had been doing it for a long time. During the Korean War, there were some Americans who they thought they got brainwashed and they were forced to confess. Some of them were probably kept awake for a long time. And
the Manchurian Candidate.
Who knows what kind of drugs they gave them and things like that, and what other techniques they used. And some people talked about they even might have had a similar machine that we got our hands on from the Russians. It's called the Lida machine. People can look that stuff up. Dr. Ross Addy got to look at one and study it some. But it's some of the techniques too that were reported possibly with MK Ultra in trying to split someone's personality. Some people might think of it as splitting the hemispheres of the brain or something like that. And to try to create a split personality or to try to do all these things.
To make alternate personalities. Yeah. It's 13 cubed. Exactly. 13 cubed is 2,800 and something, but that's how many they theorize that your brain can be shattered into that many personalities. Almost 3,000.
I just heard that yesterday or the day before. Somebody referencing that exact thing.
The 13 cubed.
Yeah, it was a scientist.
Yeah, and then Dr. Ewan Cameron, all the MK stuff. Yeah, that stuff, and Candy, what's her name? They found she was like a model. Found out she was actually an assassin and all this stuff. And then there's the Kathy O'Brien and the ladies who have written books. They were like sex slaves for the White House and shit like that. I don't know how much of that you've.
I know a little bit, but not specifics. Right. Most of my knowledge is about MK Ultra and some of that. I've read a little bit about some of the things led up. I haven't looked through all like the 139 sub-project headings and things like that. I am aware that about maybe the 22,000 documents they did find, that's probably very fractional of the documents that were destroyed prior, and those were only found due to a filing error. So I'm someone that I'm pretty convinced that at that time they would have been studying electromagnetic effects on the brain, on the body, to incorporate those things in, but those things never came to light then. And there was no document of it, and so people didn't know maybe what was even being done then, that it wasn't just LSD and these other mind control drugs that were all done and implemented. And I've heard some horror stories surrounding them. There's Unit 731 from Japan. I mean, they talk about Nazi experiments. I have no doubt of the things that were carried out by the militaries and things like that.
Absolutely,
and,
kids in cages, having wild animals devour children alive while the children in the next cage watched, to bring them into a state of consciousness of total abject fear, to shatter their personalities, and then the repeated SRA, satanic ritual abuse, the rapings, making children kill other children. It's fucking inhumane, it's not human, And what's fascinating, this technology apparently has been around since the dawn of time, but now they've got this electronic aspect where they're saying they don't even have to torture. Well, not that they don't have to torture. I mean, it is torture, but they don't have to physically get a hold of you and tie you up and torture you like that anymore. They can use all this electronic stuff.
And some people have taken to calling it no-touch torture. No-touch torture techniques. One of the people, if you're not familiar, that came forward, he was a DOD scientist, is Dr. Robert Duncan, and he's come out and spoken about this kind of technology. He's one of the people that I've certainly gotten some information from. Again, I think he has to be careful what he says a little bit. In his one book that he actually wasn't going to publish under his own name, but it got released from supposedly a targeted individual that he got a copy of it. He probably gave him a copy, and he threw it on the internet. And then so he credited it. But I don't think he even wanted to publish that under his name, and it was never published, but it's a PDF file online. It's called the Matrix Deciphered.
So I have watched interviews with him on the Basis Project. So are you familiar with the Basis Project?
I'm not.
Okay, all right. Just wondering. It's just like a YouTube show. It's one of the biggest conspiracy shows in the world. And this man you're talking about, Dr. Duncan, he's been interviewed on the Basis Project.
And I think some of the things he mentions about this being a wide spectrum weapon. So again, I mean, I look at a facility, and HAARP's just a good example. I'm not saying they're using HAARP per se, but it can go all the way from basically 0 pulses per second up into the ultra high frequency range, to hit, billions of pulses per second, up in the gigahertz. And so that's a huge amount of flexibility. It can also pan across the sky very fast. So it's just that kind of technology is out there, and it's out there in different parts. And then so you can take looking at how mind control has been conducted in the past, the techniques and things that have been involved. And then you can look at the technology in separate spheres, and you can look at what people have published and put out there. Jose Delgado is a good example for, making his own implant, the stemoceiver, and